You ever watch someone walk into a room like they've already replaced the furniture, fired half the staff, and renamed the building after themselves, all before saying hello? That's what it felt like the moment she stepped off the elevator. Tight red dress, $1,000 heels, sunglasses still on, even though we were indoors, and a smug little half smile that said she wasn't just visiting, she was taking over. No announcement, no orientation. Just a vague, she's consulting for Dalton while he's abroad. But everyone knew what it meant. When the CEO's mistress starts showing up at meetings and getting her own office with frosted glass doors, the writing's on the damn wall. I'm Daniel Ross, 58 years old. Spent 31 of those years working for Dalton Enterprises. Started when the office still smelled like sawdust and cigarette smoke. Back then it was a warehouse, a dream, and a folding table. I helped build it into a multi-million-dollar operation, not with buzzwords or vision boards, but with logistics, contracts, and 10-hour days that turned into 12-hour nights. I knew the inner guts of this company better than anyone still breathing inside it, and she knew none of it, didn't care to either. First day she made the rounds like she was royalty. Didn't shake hands, she gave nods. Gave the marketing team a 5-minute speech about rebranding for the next generation, which meant replacing our navy blue logo with some pastel nightmare that looked like a tampon commercial. Then she stopped by my office, leaned in the doorway like it was a photo op, and said, "You must be the legacy guy." I gave her a polite smile. "I manage operations and legal compliance." She winked like I'd just confirmed her assumption. Right, legacy. She didn't ask what that meant, didn't need to. She'd already decided I was dead weight. Over the next 2 weeks, she started making changes. Small at first, petty. The vending machines got swapped out. No more pretzels or peanut M and Mints. Now, it was seaweed snacks and kombucha. I caught her in the break room, once lecturing Linda from accounting about heart-healthy alternatives. Linda's been with the company 20 years and brings in homemade banana bread every Friday. She didn't need a lecture. She needed the goddamn M and Mims. Then it was the meeting schedules. Standing meetings got moved, time-blocked, restructured. She added insight sessions and culture alignment reviews no one asked for. Deleted entire folder structures from our shared drive. Said they were cluttered. Half the team lost access to critical documents overnight. When I raised the issue, she said, "We're trying to move faster, less friction." What she really meant was less memory, less resistance. Fewer people who remember how things used to work before she started stomping through them in heels. I watched good people get pushed aside. Senior staff suddenly reassigned, offices reshuffled, titles rewritten. Not fired, just slowly erased. It was a quiet purge, done with pastel-colored memos and fake smiles. I said nothing. I watched. I knew it was only a matter of time before she came for me. It happened on a Thursday. Her assistant called me up. Said she wanted to chat, said it casual, like we were grabbing coffee. Her office was different, white furniture, gold trim, one of those abstract motivational posters that said something about elevation. She didn't offer me a seat. She stood behind the desk, one hand on her hip, the other twirling a pen like it was a prop. "Dan," she said, "you've been here a long time." I nodded. "Which is great, really. Stability is so important." Another pause. Smile tightening, like she was forcing herself to swallow something unpleasant. "But we're heading into a new era. We need leaders who reflect the speed, energy, and agility of where this company is going." She tilted her head, like she thought that made the words sound softer. "And the truth is, your style just isn't aligned anymore. It's outdated." She said it like she was doing me a favor, like I'd thank her for pointing it out. "You're holding the company back, Dan, and we can't afford that." I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just looked at her and nodded. Because what she didn't know, what she hadn't even bothered to check, was that the company wasn't the only thing with protections. I had them too. She had no idea what she just stepped into, but she would. Soon. She didn't bother with small talk, no pleasantries, no polite setup. Just stood there behind the desk that used to belong to someone who actually earned it, arms crossed, a half smirk on her face, like she was about to announce I'd won second place in a game I didn't know I was playing. "Let's not drag this out," she said, flipping a file closed that I guarantee she hadn't read. "You've been here a long time, Dan. Too long, if we're being honest." I stayed standing. I had seen this coming 3 weeks ago, the moment she started gutting departments she didn't understand. The moment she looked at institutional knowledge like it was a liability instead of a strength. All I had to do was wait. Let her hand me the match and light it herself. "This company is moving fast now," she said, walking around to lean on the edge of the desk like we were peers having a casual chat. "We need a team that's sharp, adaptive, modern, people who can sprint, not stroll." She paused, studied my face, probably expected pushback, maybe some wounded protest. "You're too old and too slow for what this company needs now." There it was, the line she'd been dying to say. I watched her savor it, let it hang in the air like perfume from a bottle she couldn't afford when she first met Dalton. I didn't blink, didn't frown, just nodded, once. "Got it," I said. She looked a little surprised, like maybe I didn't understand what she'd just said. Like maybe I was going to argue, pull some tenure bullshit, beg for a second chance. She had no clue who she was talking to. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my key card, and set it gently on the corner of the desk. I didn't toss it, didn't slap it down, just placed it there with the same deliberate calm I'd used when I signed the merger contracts 5 years ago. The same calm I'd used when Dalton first handed me the pen and said, "Write your own safety net. You've earned it." "Thanks for the clarity," I said. I turned, walked out the door, and didn't look back. Down the hallway, heads dipped or looked away. No one wanted to be caught watching. No one wanted to be next. I walked past the break room, past the new mural she had commissioned that said "Innovate boldly" in font, so modern it made your eyes hurt. I walked out the same doors I'd unlocked every morning for 3 decades. I didn't feel sad. I felt ready. In the car, I didn't turn the radio on, just let the silence breathe. The streets blurred by in streaks of gray and concrete, and I started seeing it all again. My first day. The old warehouse floors. The way the lights used to flicker overhead. I remembered when the office printer caught fire, and I rewired the breaker myself because we couldn't afford a contractor. I remembered shipping pallets by hand, signing vendor contracts by flashlight during a power outage, and writing our original code structure on a whiteboard that now hangs in a lobby no one uses. I remembered Dalton's voice late one night when we were the only 2 left in the building. "You've held this company together more times than anyone will ever know. Let's make sure they can't screw you over if things change." So, we put it in writing. Buried in the 4th addendum of my employment agreement, paragraph 9, was a clause that didn't sound impressive on the surface: termination without just cause. But the language was precise. Any termination without prior written warning, documentation of underperformance or breach of conduct, triggered a full payout: 2 years' salary, full pension, annual bonus prorated, and equity vesting. No negotiation, no appeals. It had never been used until now. That night, I poured a whiskey, not to mourn, just to mark the moment. There's something satisfying about honoring the end of a thing properly. Not dramatic, not angry, just final. I picked up the phone and dialed the number that hadn't changed in 20 years. My lawyer answered on the second ring. "It's done," I said. "Start the clock." The moment I hung up with my lawyer, it all kicked into motion. No need for threats, no shouting, no backroom deals. Just gears turning the way I designed them to. Smooth, silent, and irreversible. The clause was ironclad. Dalton and I wrote it together after the last buyout scare. Back then, we were both fed up with the suits trying to restructure away everything that made the company stable. So I told him flat out, if they're going to keep playing chess with real people's lives, I want my king covered. He laughed and said, "Hell, write it yourself." So I did. Took it to legal, had it reviewed, signed, sealed, buried in the appendix of my employment agreement under contingency terms. Most people skip that part. She clearly did. Termination without cause, without performance review or prior written notice, triggers the full package. 2 years base salary, annual bonus based on trailing 3-year average, vested shares regardless of maturity, full pension locked in, health coverage extended for 24 months, no room for discussion. And most importantly, it didn't require approval. The second she said, "You're too old and too slow," it activated on its own. She didn't see it. Of course she didn't. She probably skimmed the executive contracts, maybe ran a Control F for severance, and assumed the rest was fluff. She wouldn't have recognized a legal landmine, even if I handed her a map and a shovel. By noon the next day, I started getting the calls. First was Julia from HR. She left a message, her voice sharp but shaky. "Dan, can you give me a ring when you have a minute? Just a couple of quick questions about your transition." I let it sit. An hour later, a follow-up. "I just wanted to clarify some things in your agreement. It's a bit unique." Damn right it is. Then came the email. Official company letterhead, full of vague phrasing like terms under review and possible revisions. They were trying to stall, but it was too late. The clause didn't need their interpretation. It was already locked and loaded. Legal had the paperwork. My lawyer had already filed the notice. All they could do now was scramble. Around 3, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Alan, the company's lead accountant. Nice guy, quiet, stayed out of the politics mostly. "Hey Dan," he said, voice low like he was calling from a church pew. Listen, I just got a copy of your agreement." I said nothing. "So there's this clause," he continued. "I mean, I think I understand it, but I just wanted to make sure. This is like real, right? I mean, you actually get." He trailed off. I waited a beat. "Talk to legal," I said. "It's all there." I hung up. I could feel the ripple. She must have gotten wind of it by then. Maybe someone tried to warn her gently. Maybe she brushed it off. Or maybe she was still blissfully unaware that she'd just cost the company more than her salary for the next 5 years. Dalton was out of the country, Europe somewhere, meeting with investors. She had full autonomy while he was gone, full control. That was the pitch, right? Let her make decisions while you focus on growth. I wonder if he even checked what those decisions were, or if he just let her play CEO for a week, thinking it'd keep her happy and out of his inbox. He didn't know yet, but he would. I imagined him landing, phone lighting up with alerts, finance team emails, legal red flags, calendar invites for emergency calls, all pointing to the same question. What the hell did she do? I didn't need to be there to see it unfold. I already knew how this played out. First comes confusion, panicked emails and rapid-fire texts, trying to get ahead of something they don't understand. Then comes blame. HR blaming legal, legal blaming HR. Everyone pretending they thought someone else was handling it. And then comes the silence, the heavy, stunned silence that settles in when they realize it can't be undone. I sat on my porch that evening, same chair I always used after a long day. Whiskey in hand, cool air brushing against my shirt sleeves. My phone sat on the table next to me, screen dark, but I could feel it vibrating from time to time. They were still trying, but I had nothing left to say. The clause was doing all the talking now. My phone lit up at 7:58 a.m., sharp, one text, then another, then 3 more, stacked like dominoes falling in real time. The first one was from Ruth, the front desk secretary, someone who's worked at that company longer than most of the VPs combined. "He's losing it." I didn't even have to ask who she meant. Dalton was back. His flight must have landed before sunrise. Probably skipped customs with some fast-track badge his money bought. Came straight from the airport with his suit jacket still wrinkled and his tie shoved into his coat pocket. He didn't stop by his office, didn't check in with HR, just went straight for hers. The second message came from Julia. "Do not answer your phone. He's furious." I smiled, sipped my coffee, waited. I'd played that scenario over in my head more times than I care to admit. But this wasn't a fantasy or a revenge daydream. This was just the final click in a mechanism she'd triggered with her own arrogance. He walked in, found his company bleeding 6 figures, and realized the woman he trusted to keep the ship steady had yanked the wheel off just to feel powerful. Apparently, he didn't knock. One of the newer guys from marketing sent me a video clip, shaky and muffled. You couldn't see much, just a sliver of her office from the hallway, but you could hear his voice, clear, sharp, cutting through the air like a hammer cracking glass. "Are you kidding me? There's an ironclad clause. Do you know what you just did?" I replayed it twice, just for the hell of it. She tried to talk over him. You could hear it in the background, her voice rising, brittle and fast, probably saying something about streamlining or modernizing the team. I didn't need to hear the words to know the tone. She was scrambling, and Dalton, he wasn't buying it. The board had already seen the numbers. Legal confirmed the clause was active. Accounting confirmed the payment had to go out by the end of the week. She thought she was cutting dead weight. What she actually did was trigger a contractual obligation the size of a new department budget. And now everyone was watching her drown. They started the damage control within hours. HR sent out a company-wide memo about strategic restructuring that read like it had been written by a robot on a caffeine bender. People were whispering in hallways. Nobody wanted to be next. Half the team stopped making eye contact when walking past her office. But the spin didn't land. The excuse was too weak. She tried to say, I wasn't contributing, that I resisted change, that the evolving corporate culture required a shift in leadership energy. But no one was buying that either. Because I hadn't just been around, I'd built half the systems still keeping their lights on. The vendors knew me by name. The attorneys had my cell saved. There were junior managers still using templates I wrote in 2009. They knew what this really was. She wanted to prove something, and she got her proof, just not the kind that saves careers. Later that afternoon, I got a knock at the door, a courier dressed too formally for the neighborhood. He handed me a thick envelope and gave me a nod like he'd been told not to ask questions. The letter inside was printed on Dalton's personal stationery, heavy stock, sharp edges, signed in real ink. 3 pages of corporate speak, all trying to say one thing without actually saying it. Please don't take this further. He didn't apologize. Dalton never did. But he acknowledged the regrettable nature of recent actions and expressed deep respect for my long-standing contributions to the company. He hoped we could consider resolving the matter efficiently and discreetly. In other words, don't make this messier than it already is. I read it once, then again, then folded it neatly and set it aside. I didn't need to respond. The clause was already doing the talking. She thought I was just another old man coasting toward retirement, a relic, something to phase out quietly before the shareholders noticed. I could see it from the start, the way she looked at me in meetings, like I was furniture left over from another era. Every decision she made after Dalton handed her the keys was designed to erase the history that came before her. She didn't want to lead the company. She wanted to claim it, and in her mind, claiming it meant gutting anything that reminded people who built it in the first place. What she never figured out was that I wasn't just a nameplate on the door. I was the foundation under the whole damn building. I didn't fight her, never raised my voice, never warned her. That was the beauty of it. I didn't have to. She walked into the trap by herself, smiling. The clause I'd written wasn't fancy. It didn't use $10 words or bury itself in a pile of jargon. It was simple. If I was terminated without documented cause, without a prior written warning or performance review, the company owed me everything. 2 years of salary, all accrued bonuses, a share of annual profits based on a 3-year trailing average, full vesting of my retirement plan and stock options, extended health coverage, all of it. No discretion, no negotiation, no approvals needed. Dalton had signed it himself, in ink, witnessed, notarized. When I first brought it to him, he'd laughed. Jesus, Dan, you planning on suing me someday? I told him no. I was planning on making sure if some hotshot MBA or flavor of the month girlfriend ever decided I was expendable, I wouldn't have to rely on his memory of who I was to protect myself. He didn't argue, just handed me a pen and said, I trust you. I don't think he expected to be proven right quite like this. After the blow-up in her office, things moved quickly. The board called an emergency meeting. From what I heard, she wasn't even invited. They didn't want spin. They wanted facts. HR laid out what she'd done. Legal laid out what it cost. And finance, bless their panicked hearts, laid out just how badly the numbers would bleed if they tried to fight the clause instead of honor it. Dalton sent her home the next morning, not fired, just temporarily relieved of executive duties pending board review, which, in corporate speak, is the equivalent of being told to clean out your desk before they come up with an excuse that sounds better than you cost us 6 figures because you didn't read the paperwork. She was stripped of all decision-making authority, passwords changed, emails rerouted. Her office door was still there, but no one knocked. I heard she tried to show up for a branding meeting and wasn't even let past reception. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. I didn't ask for my job back, didn't ask to meet with the board. I already had what mattered, my contract, the law, and the very clear evidence that she had walked me out without a single documented warning. They tried to stall, of course. That letter Dalton sent me, all full of regret and flowery corporate language, was a last-ditch attempt to contain the fallout. It didn't ask for forgiveness, it asked for quiet. But I didn't need to make noise. The clause did that for me. The payout was non-negotiable. They knew it. I knew it. My lawyer knew it. I told him not to entertain counteroffers, no settlement games. I wanted every cent. I didn't want their apology. I wanted the terms honored, exactly as written. Anything less would have been insulting. For years, I'd watched other people get chewed up by the system. Smart people, loyal people, folks who gave decades to a company only to get nudged out and offered some weak severance package wrapped in a confidentiality clause. I made damn sure that wasn't going to be me. And now, all those board members who nodded along while she played CEO had to sit there and sign checks to make me go away. I got the payment confirmation on a Thursday morning. No phone call, no message, just a direct deposit notification on my phone while I was eating eggs on the back patio. I opened the banking app and stared at the number for a long second. It didn't surprise me. It just satisfied me. The accuracy of it. The finality. There it was. 2 years of my life, every bonus, every penny they owed me, sitting neatly in my account, beyond the reach of anyone who thought I didn't matter anymore. I smiled. Then I shut my phone off, leaned back in my chair, and looked up at the clouds shifting slow across the sky. They thought that was the end of it, but I wasn't done yet. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those cool gray ones where the sky looks like wet concrete and the air smells like it might rain, but never does. I was sitting at my usual corner table in a quiet cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place where the baristas don't try to remember your name and the regulars just nod instead of saying hello. My coffee was hot, strong, and no nonsense, just the way I like it. I had a paperback open in front of me, something I'd read before but couldn't quite put down, something about returning to what's familiar after the world's moved on. I was halfway through a paragraph when I caught movement outside the window. I glanced up. Just instinct. And that's when I saw her. She wasn't in heels, not this time. No stilettos, no designer bag swinging off her arm like a weapon. No glossy red lipstick or fresh from the salon hair. Just a simple coat, flats with worn soles, and a face that looked like it hadn't slept right in weeks. She was thinner, shoulders pulled in like she was bracing against a wind that never came. Her eyes were fixed ahead, locked on the sidewalk like it owed her something. And when she passed the window, when she finally looked up and saw me, she froze. It lasted maybe a second. Her expression didn't shift, not fully. But I saw the recognition, the hit, the weight of all the choices she made settling in behind her eyes. There was no smile, no wave, no attempt at damage control, just a bitter stare and a flicker of something sharp and sour. She kept walking. I didn't move, didn't nod, didn't smirk. Just took another sip of my coffee and turned the page. That's the thing about revenge. People think it has to be loud, explosive, but the most satisfying kind is quiet, surgical. You don't torch the place. You just walk out, leave the matches behind, and let the ones who underestimated you set the fire themselves. She did that. She walked into a role she didn't earn and swung her weight around like her charm was currency. And for a while, it worked. She had Dalton wrapped around her finger and the board too distracted to care. She pushed out good people, made flashy changes, tried to remake the company in her image, but she never bothered to learn its bones. She never understood the systems or the people or the invisible lines that kept it from collapsing under its own growth. She saw me and thought I was part of the problem. Dead weight, too old, too quiet. What she didn't see was the framework I'd built, the contracts I'd written, the clauses she never read, the fail-safes I designed to protect the people who actually kept the company alive while the power players played musical chairs upstairs. She fired me, thinking it was a win, thinking she'd made her mark, and I let her. I walked out with my head high and said nothing because I knew the clause would speak for me. I didn't raise a fuss, didn't get legal involved publicly. I didn't have to. It was already in motion. 2 years of salary, bonuses, profits, and full pension, filed, triggered, and enforced. When Dalton found out, it was too late. The payout hit my account without a single word exchanged. No meetings, no offers to renegotiate, no groveling, just money wired, silently and completely, like a tribute paid to a king you thought you'd buried. She lost everything, Not just her title or the office with the skyline view, but the illusion of control. The board clipped her wings. Dalton pushed her out quietly to avoid headlines. She became a footnote, a cautionary tale whispered between strategy calls and nervous glances. Her LinkedIn still says strategic consultant. Last update, 6 months ago. I've heard whispers. She tried to pivot, pitch herself as some kind of turnaround expert. But the word gets around. People talk. Not loud, not cruel, just enough to ensure the phone rings less and the meetings dry up. That's what happens when your resume is written in arrogance and your references are all board members who had to sign a check with clenched teeth. Meanwhile, I didn't rush into anything. I took my time, said no to a few offers that felt like stress in a nicer package. I traveled, rebuilt the fence in my backyard, took my daughter and her kids to a baseball game, started sleeping better, started remembering what it felt like to not be carrying other people's weight. I didn't need to gloat. Seeing her walk past that cafe window, alone, hollowed out, stripped of all the things she thought made her powerful, that was enough. She did the damage herself. All I did was walk away and let the math do its work, because that's what it was. Not vengeance, not luck. Math. She made a move without reading the board. She fired a man she didn't understand. She pulled the trigger on a trap I set years ago, and the company paid for it, every last cent. Next time someone thinks I'm too old to matter, they'd better check the fine print.